Hey girl, I see you've come a long, long way. You're not alone anymore. Come sit with me and tell me your story. You've come a long way, girl. Pulled yourself out and cracked the mess. Those were some dark times back then, but it's all over now. You're not alone anymore. Come sit with me and tell me your story. This is Trucking with Tamie, where your journey's heard and your voice is free. You're not alone, come share your story with me.
Hi, welcome back, everybody. So, before we get started, I do want to remind our listeners that the views and opinions expressed on Trucking with Tamie are those of myself and my guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of this station or its affiliates. This program is for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered professional, legal, or safety advice. I'm your host, Tamie. Today, my guest, Jess Graham, is a professional truck driver, owner, operator, and an active member of Real Women in Trucking, where she is a leading voice for driver advocacy, safety, and industry reform. Hi, Jess.
Hey, how are you doing today?
I am great, actually. It's always nice to have you. We always have a lot of fun.
We will get back together for dinner next time I pass through.
Jess is she was my first human interaction being back home, and I was probably a little over hyper about it. But she was my first like adult lunch date in a very long time.
We had a nice time though. It's always fun to meet my trucking sisters out and take a moment of normalcy and step away from the truck. So
Yes. Normalcy is not something we get a lot of out there at all. And that's something, if you guys are thinking about getting into the trucking industry, you just throw the word normal out the window because it doesn't exist. There's trucking normal.
yeah.
So, Jess, for all of our wonderful listeners who have no idea who Jess Graham is, can you give them an introduction to you and life before trucking? And then we'll dive into your trucking history.
I am a Detroit native that was a stay-at-home mom, and then in 2007, my daughter's dad and I had a sedan service operating out of Detroit Metro Airport, and so that was all I knew in the logistics side, and circumstances, domestic violence. Let's just be real. Domestic violence got me to a point where I had to make a break for myself and my daughter, but I had no idea where to turn. So as I was looking for something in that same wheelhouse as the sedan service, I couldn't find anything, and I started seeing if I wanted to stay in the logistics or transportation field, I was going to have to get my CDL, and so that's what I did. Like I said, I was a stay-at-home mom that ran the business out of the house, so it was on the dispatching side, and that's pretty much it.
So you were a single mom, and you were faced with having to get your CDL, which meant you had to go to school, and then you had to do the first part training process, which you can't do with a child in tow. So how did you navigate that?
So my daughter's older sister I'd stayed in Michigan until she was just about to graduate high school. She was 18, and my daughter was 9. And so I stayed as long as I could to get her up to graduation and not abandon her either. And then I sat down with her and I said, I have to leave. I'll be back for your sister. I'm not leaving you guys. But I have to make a break for a minute and see if I can get my feet underneath me before I come back. And so I tearfully left my daughter with her sister and her dad, you know.
You made me cry.
And my dad dropped me at the Detroit Metro bus station at 5 o'clock in the morning. That's not where anybody wants to be, but
No.
I was on a bus to a mega carrier to see if I could actually make it happen. And it was a long 11 weeks.
So I was going to ask how long. So school and out with your trainer was 11 weeks. That's a long time to be away.
Yeah. I was 3 weeks at the school, and then I had 1 week where I had to sit and wait for a trainer. And then I believe it was 7 weeks I completed my training miles. And I was
We lost audio.
sorry, I was assigned a truck, and I was by no means ready for it. I was terrified. I had asked for more training. They said, you're actually one of our better students, so no. And I was in my truck by myself for about 2 weeks, and then my dispatcher said, you ready? And I said, okay. And he got me a load to Michigan, and I went and picked my daughter up and said bye.
So when you were going through your training, did you have much home time at all?
No. That's something I need people that are looking to enter the industry to completely understand. It's one of the most the recruiters don't talk about it, and it's not really, when you leave your home. I have a whole bunch of different rules, but when you leave your home to go to a training carrier, which I frown upon based on my experience and those of others, I feel like there's a lot better routes. But if you are going to take that route, you have to be prepared to be away from your home from the time you leave to start the schooling until the time you are solo qualified and in your own truck. And in our industry, it takes 3 to 6 months to complete that process. So you have to be mentally prepared to be gone from your home, your family, everything that's going on at home if you want to be successful in this industry for up to about 6 months. You know,
Yeah,
it
I
could
agree with
take
that.
less, but it could take less time. You could get through your training real quick and be good. I mean, there are some training programs I don't believe they're any good that are like 1 week and you're solo qualified. I'm like, no, you're not. Absolutely
Yeah.
not. But mentally, you have to have resigned yourself to know that you're going to be gone for 3 to 6 months.
Right. In my experience, companies have the people get lonely, they get homesick. And so what I heard a lot as a trainer was if we take them home, sometimes they don't make it as truck drivers because they can't handle being home. So if they go home too soon, then they stay home and they don't come back out. And I can see that
Exactly.
because I was a mom too, and I left a violent situation for the road. And it was very hard for me making that transition away from my family as well. There's a lot of crying. There's a lot of doubting yourself, questioning if you made the right decision during that first initial time period.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely. I mean, you have to sit in the quiet spaces of yourself. You know, trucking is a very quiet space, even in a trainer's truck, especially in the team driving situations, which aren't the best situations, but you're behind the wheel by yourself. You're in your cab by yourself. And it's one of those where if you're not prepared, if you're not okay, or you're struggling with something, it'll eat you alive.
Yeah, it will. And so, you did mention that when you went solo, you were not ready. I was one of those same people that was not ready when I went solo. I went out for a couple days and I decided, nope, I need some more reassurance. So I teamed for a very short period of time with someone I trusted just to get that confidence level. But it seems that I've learned from my own experiences and talking to every driver out there that when you go solo for the first time, most of us have a very scary week. And everything is very overwhelming the first few times that we do anything. So how was your first week all by yourself? Anything stand out from that week?
I'm going to let you know I am markedly better at backing now because I hooked to a preloaded trailer in our yard and I was sent from Burns Harbor, Indiana to Republic, Missouri. And so it was my first delivery by myself. And I was sent around the back of the building and I had to like back around the building and over the railroad tracks and the yard dogs are whipping. And it took me an hour and 15 minutes to get in my dock. I'm a little bit faster now. You know, I have gotten my backing down to, you know, 1 or 2 pull-ups, but I went over to another driver because I mean everybody just was sitting there watching me. There weren't many, but there were a couple. And I was like, I don't think I can do this. It's my first trip. And he goes, you can. I said, can you please just do it for me? He goes, absolutely not. And he said, I'm going to stand here and I'm just going to stand here and you're going to aim right for me. That way you know what to aim for. And I'll tell you to stop before you hit me. And that was it. That was the click, the key to clicking. But it's so overwhelming. When I just even at school on that side, the first day on the backing range and doing the yard range, that's the first time I'd ever been in a truck ever in my life. I didn't have a parent that came home every week with their truck and I got to ride the summers with them. No, I had my aunt and uncle who were drivers, but I only saw them, once a year and they never had their truck with them when I saw them. So I wasn't exposed to that. So it was like, you might as well have asked me to land a rocket ship on the moon as opposed to straight line that back the truck. I mean, that would have been less intimidating. And when you see them on the highways, they don't look as big as when you're standing next to it, looking up, that's the one thing most people say to me when they're like, wow, it is so big. Yeah. That's why you need 2 hands to climb up. And I'm going to give you a shove, Aunt Betty. But, we get those first week jitters out and you get comfortable. And I'm actually glad that I wasn't, I couldn't find somebody that wanted to team with me or that, because the people, by the time we all got out of our trucks and into our own trucks, they were ready to go. And I was nervous and that was all it was. It wasn't that I didn't have the skill. And I learned to sharpen my skills. I would take a lot of back roads and that's how my shifting got like butter because, I'm by myself on this back highway, shift up, shift down, shift up, shift down, and I just kept practicing at it. And, it becomes muscle memory. Everything becomes, muscle memory and routine. And then trying to remember all your paperwork steps and, trying to like read signs as you're rolling down the road, but you're not even sure that you're on the road and like you don't want to look away and you're white knuckle the steering wheel and your first couple weeks are gonna be the scariest thing. But I think that I'm a better caliber driver because I didn't let my fear overtake me and I hear the adage all the time that, all of our team driving, at some of these big carriers, we put you as teams. That's not because it benefits the driver. It's because it benefits the company. It's solo where you actually learn every function of the truck and you have to learn how to do everything yourself. And that's, I think, the biggest lesson because like my aunt, she's like, you're so much stronger of a driver than I am because I've always had pops with me. I've always had your uncle and, he has done the hard things for me. So I didn't have to get my blouse dirty, or, she's like, I don't think I could do it solo, but you're out here and you can do every aspect and every function of your job yourself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that
I
was
could
what my
do it.
first weeks taught me.
Yeah, I could do it. Mine was a lack of confidence. And
Exactly.
I second guessed everything. And so, I didn't have a company that said, "Hey team." I had me saying, actually I had this gentleman that I went to orientation with, Clarence. I'm like, he was, had been driving, really sweet guy, not someone I felt threatened by at all. And he trained with me for just a couple weeks. That was all I needed. I just needed, and he didn't back for me. He just was kind of like a crutch, I guess.
Yeah.
Until finally he's like, "Tamie, you don't need me. You are doing fine. you don't, you got this." But I just needed a little crutch. And at first I was like, I felt a little insecure about that. But then, I just owned it, because it is, I see a lot of women who doubt themselves, and it's like, you know what, if you need something and you need it, don't be afraid to ask for it. Don't be afraid to say, "Hey, I need extra backing. Hey, I need extra trip planning. Hey, I just need a little bit more reassurance that my confidence, isn't going to get me, or I'm not going to get myself into a predicament." And I think a part of that is we hear so many horror stories about this industry before we get into it, that our expectations of what we're going to deal with are a little skewed. Because we what people tell us and what our actual day to day is very different.
Yeah, no, I'm going to my recruiter is a bleep liar.
Yes.
The one, I did it for you because we knew I was trying to throw a cuss word in, but I was not any part of the process. And I think I've typed it up before, and I'll have to send it to you just because it's really interesting, because I actually sat down one day when I was involved as a witness in a lawsuit about my experience at a company where a woman had an issue and sued the company. And my experience mirrored hers, not as brutal and extreme as hers, but there were a lot of similarities in our treatment. And so I sat down and I spent a couple of days just going over and writing from the minute I got the first phone call from the recruiter all the way to when I left that company, all the little things that happened in the day to day, and the what I thought was supposed to happen, or what I was told was going to happen, and what actually happened, day and night. Like, not one thing that the recruiter told me was the actual process that we went through to in process and to go through it, and like nothing. It was nothing. No. And that's one of the biggest things I hear now from drivers when I'm like, "Well, if you have any questions, just let me know." We're like, "No, I don't need it because I've already talked to the recruiter." I'm like, "I guess good luck." Okay, save my number anyway.
You'll learn.
Yeah.
No, that is true. That is true. There is no truth in recruiting, as they say in our industry, right? You have truth in lending. There's no truth in recruiting. So what you're told and what you experience are generally two different things. And that's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but you will survive it. You will learn. It may be a little uncomfortable, but you'll learn.
I feel like I feel like, though, if we were a little bit more honest on the recruiting side, we would have a higher success rate and a lower driver turnover, because if you are not prepared mentally for everything you're going to endure, I mean, it's just the same as at the military. Like, I don't think they share what the actual break-in period is for a new soldier. Like, they don't tell you the nitty-gritty. You have some Hollywood movies, but that's not what it is once you finally arrive. And that's exactly what my experience felt like. It was 300 of us that ended up by day 2 was only 150 of us. And I mean, we're like stepping off the bus and we're right in this line and told to fill out this paperwork and then wait for the doctor to do our physical over here. And we had to do an agility test over there and the this and the that's and all of like, they were just like shoving us in like a circus formation. Just, it was crazy. It's just a flurry of activity and no one is like actually giving us like a breakdown. Like we didn't even have like a breakdown of like what our schedule was going to be. It was like just somebody would like, go stand in that line over there. And then we'd stand in that line. And then once we're done with that one, we'd come out and they'd be like, go stand in that line over there. By the time, I got off the bus and, I started my day at 5 a.m., got off the bus. It was like 3 p.m. And by the time I got to the hotel for the night on the first night, it was like 9:30, and then we had to be back up on the bus at, 6:30 because they had so many people that they had to take multiple buses, back and forth.
And I don't know what your training environment was like, but the one I went through and several others that I have seen or heard about are high pressure. So, you're already super stressed learning. You're in a short time environment where you have to learn a lot of skills in a short period. And then instructors put a lot of extra stress on you as well. Mental wise, most of them are, they don't sugarcoat and they don't baby you, so, I actually, during my training, one of the trainers made one of the male students cry. And they actually came to me and said, "Hey, can we switch trainers?" And I'm like, "You want to put the girl with a guy who makes people cry? I mean, what kind of reasoning is that?" And I get in this truck and I'm like intimidated because he's making the guys cry. And I get in the driver's seat and this guy is just like side eyeing me. And he looks at me, he goes, "Are you going to cry next?" And it kind of pissed me off. I'm not going to lie. And I look at him and I'm like, "You're going to cry before I do, dude." I mean, plain and simple. And he smiled and he says, "That's exactly the attitude you need to have." I'm like, "Oh, that's what it took. It's just me to be mean." I mean, I just had to be. And he's like, "No, you have to have a backbone out here. If you're going
I
to
tell that to my
survive."
broker all the time.
Yeah.
I was like, no matter, because she works on a whole team of boys and she's the only girl. And I'd say that to her all the time when she's having a bad day. I'm like, no matter how mean you are to those boys, be meaner. Always be meaner.
You have to have a backbone out
you
there.
have to.
And while that was a horrible experience, right, for me entering this industry, because I was like, I had never seen anything like it. The thought behind it is true. It really is, and it's important. So we'll stop with all that horrible first week training stuff. So you survived it. We're not going to say we thrived because definitely survive all that. And you get your cutie patootie in the truck with you. And homeschool bound while you're learning the road. What was that like?
It took a lot of discipline. So when she first moved in the truck with me, she didn't have, we didn't, like, I was still learning what was going on. You get in a new truck, you don't even know where anything goes yet and where to put anything. And so she just had all of her stuff and it was thrown on the top bunk. And I put a stop to that real quick when one morning her tablet and a tennis shoe fell down the side of the bed and smacked me in the face and woke me up. Not very fun. So yeah, we had to learn how to contain that mess. And the answer is a Foot Locker at the end of her bed. And that's all you can have is that space right there. But I'd start my day and, it was none of this. You get to sleep a normal schedule. If I don't get to sleep a normal schedule, like, you're on my schedule. And so I got up in the morning and she had 30 minutes from the time I started my day to be up in the seat next to me. You didn't have to be fully functioning and awake and dressed. You could be wrapped in your blanket like a little sausage, but you had to be up. And then she had her little full desk that she would do her schoolwork on while I'm driving down the road. And she actually, because it was a self-paced and she had nothing but time, and that was back before the internet was as prevalent as it is now, So she had her little workbooks, and she ended up doing almost 2 years worth of school in the year that she was in the truck with me. So
Oh, wow.
she skipped a grade. And so then she,
What
but we've
state were
got
you out? What? I'm going to interrupt real quick. What state were you out of for her schooling? I mean, what was your home state at that time?
Michigan.
So does Michigan have
And
a pretty good homeschooling program?
at that time, there was no curriculum requirements. And I didn't even have to, like, all I had to do was notify the school that I was unenrolling her and letting them know. Like, they didn't have any like structure or requirements that were like ironclad. And I looked at a couple of schoolings where I could pay for the workbooks, and then she'd have some teaching. And then I ended up just going to the teacher's resource store and buying her grade workbooks. By Christmas, she'd finished her entire grade level. So at Christmas, we got a whole next year's set of grade level workbooks. And we just tried to work what we were doing in the truck and on the road into her lessons. So little things like if she had a math problem she was working on and she couldn't figure it out, she'd write it on the windshield with dry erase markers, and I'm rolling down the road and we're walking through it, and she's just doing the math on the page, and I'm able to glance over and nope, that's wrong, try again, or what did you miss? Spelling test the same way. We'd be parked and sitting there, and I give her a spelling test, and it was just written down the side window in dry erase markers.
That's awesome.
Now I encourage any parent that wants to take their kid. I see a lot of people that are like, the road is no place for a kid. And I'm like, what? No one told me that.
Hey,
no, they would tell
single mamas. No, you have a wonderful opportunity here, single mamas.
They did tell me all the time on the CB radio, you should be home with your kids. And then all of a sudden, Helene would be like, I'm right here. Their little 9-year-old voice. So, we had rules. You don't get out of the truck without me. She knew how to use the Qualcomm, because if I was not back in the truck after a certain period of time, she was to send a message to dispatch, letting him know. And he was very he always checked in and made sure that we were always able to park in different places. And my first dispatcher, he did a lot of good things. Like, he ran me up to the Walmart DC because someone else on his board was a single dad and had his son. It was about Halima's age, in the truck. And so about once a month, he'd shoot us both up, and we would run Walmart store to store for the weekend. And during our downtime, the kids would be in with the shipping ladies, eating candy and watching Disney Channel with all the other drivers, and playing board games and roller skating through the Walmart parking lot. So they really did. My dispatcher was a former driver, and so he did his best to make sure that she was able to stretch her legs and still get some of the socialization. And so we tried to incorporate all of that. Her favorite game was pulling out the giant Rand McNally and reading city names and matching them up and trying to find on the map where we are based on the road signs, or finding the weirdest name in the city or the state that we're in. And to this day, we still pronounce Chattanooga as Chattanooga, because that's what she read it as, Chattanooga. So it will forever be Chattanooga.
My cousin called it Chattahoochee one day, so we call it Chattahoochee now.
Nice. It's definitely an interesting life. And her time on the road with me, she visited 39 states. There was a website that you could plan road trips on and find historical markers or things to do on your way. We'd always look it up and see if there was a place we could stop, or just whatever kind of places. Anytime I saw a place I could pull over and there was a historical marker, those are good in Texas, we'd pull off and just read the marker and then get back in the truck and keep going. you know.
So what was the hard part? I mean, homeschooling, I mean, Michigan was awesome. So I do want to put this in real quick before I finish my question. Homeschooling varies depending on what your home state is. I live in Illinois. Ours is very similar with Michigan. There's not a structured rules. I do believe Florida has structured rulings and some states do. So if you are considering about homeschooling or you're curious about bringing your children out onto the road and homeschooling, make sure you check with your home state for the rules before making that decision.
And
Everybody's
one
a little
other thing
different.
about with that, I was going to mention that now, because of COVID, every single state and school district has an online K through 12 program. Every single school in every single state and district, which are very good, and they're all tied to your own district, and so they keep pace with their other, you know, peers and, you know, and neighbors. So, and that's all a very good resource. You know, it actually makes it a lot easier now. All you got to do is have access to Wi-Fi, and they can log in and do their schoolwork through the state. So look up
That's
your
awesome.
state's K through 12, and it's all publicly funded, so you don't have to pay anything for it, and it runs through your school district.
Yeah, because you used to have to pay quite a bit for the online programs. So
Yeah.
what were your hardest moments as a mom out here?
Finding the moments of normalcy. So for me, one of the biggest worries I had was, you know, she's 9 years old and it was coming up on Halloween and everybody's excited about getting their costume and dressed up. And I honestly didn't even know where we were going to be or if we were going to be able to even go trick-or-treating. You know, that's a big thing at 9 years old, trick-or-treating. And so I told my dispatcher about it and he goes, all right, I got this, don't worry. And so back at that time, I don't know if Hershey still does it, but they used to hand out candy bars when a driver pulled up and checked in. You got a candy bar. And some still do it. I think like Edwardsville does it still last time I was there. But so he got me a load that delivered it at a Hershey factory in Virginia on Halloween. And I didn't tell her about it. I had a bag put aside and, you know, if we didn't find a place to stop, but then I knew we were going to be delivering to Hershey on Halloween. So she's kind of like wearing her costume. When are we stopping? And I was like, we just got to make this delivery and then we're going to go to the truck stop and walk to the closest neighborhood. And she goes, okay. So we pull up and we're at Hershey and she realizes where we are. And so she is wearing her costume like for 2 days now, hops out, grabs her pillowcase and runs to the guard shack and goes, trick or treat. That guard, without even hesitating, just opened his entire drawer where all the candy is held and scooped all of the candy out of his drawer and into her bag. So she got
like
half a pillowcase of the good chocolates. And yeah, at one stop, more candy than all of her cousins, you know, and all the good candy, you know, the Reese's and the Kit Kats and all of the good candies. And climbs back in the truck and she's like, we don't even need to go find a neighborhood. So that was her trick-or-treating experience out. But it was on the back of my mind for days. Like I wanted to be able to still find time to give her normal moments as a kid, because like a kid, even if you have a pet and you don't like get out and walk them, like they get stir crazy. Like you gotta be able to like get out. It's hard enough for an adult to be in here. So definitely doing the things like finding a way to meet up with other trucking moms that have kids or dads that have kids on the road with them, or finding parks or ways of getting out. Early on, I would take a little bit of money out of my paycheck every week and put it aside. And at the end of the month, we would, on a reset, we would find a hotel that had a swimming pool so that we could get out and get a hotel room. We could stretch out. She could go swimming. It was just these little moments that made her feel loved. And also, because we had a lot of good talks and a lot of good times and a lot of good laughs. And, when she is stir crazy, then she's, drawing mustaches on the side of the window. And every time somebody passes, she'd put her face up to the window. And then you'd see her with the giant mustache or a beard, or drawing flower. She had a lot of fun, but at the same time, she needed like quality time outside in a different space.
Yeah.
So it was just making sure I didn't get too bogged down with the freight to remember to focus on her.
Yeah. I think that's one of the good things about being with a mega when you have a child on is there's a little bit more interaction. JJ was on the truck with me when he was 11 and he could bring his, I don't know if it was PlayStation or Xbox at the time. He'll yell at me for that one. But he could play his games. He met people at the terminal, got to know other kids who were there with their parents, a little bit more interaction than when I was an owner operator, where I wouldn't be visiting terminals. It seems like you're a little bit more isolated is the word from all that as an owner operator. So I am pretty happy that when JJ was coming out on with me that I had more of a network for him to socialize with, because I think that helped a little bit with that part of normalcy, because it isn't normal. It's our normal, but it's not the normal that they're used to.
Yeah. But I think that kids are resilient, and as long as you find ways to engage them and work what you're doing into, their day to day and their learnings, and don't be so hard fast to not stop. We'd pull over at every single rest area if she needed to get out and run around. She carried in the side box roller skates, and we had gloves and ball so we could play catch. She had a soccer ball and some cones. She had her outdoor running around playing stuff, and she even had a little razor scooter.
Aww.
So it was nothing. And we'd get to a shipper or receiver or, to a truck stop, and we'd go off to the side somewhere where we're out of the way, and she'd be roller skating around. And it's funny because we would then get, people that are coming out and come over to talk to me, and then they'd bring their dogs out, or she's met a squirrel, a ferret, a lizard, a parrot, and probably 500 different dogs. People that have their pets on them, they're like, oh, there's a little kid, let's go play. I don't have a little kid with me, but here's my pet. So she out on the road gave some of the old timers a little bit of normal as well, because they're all dads and grandpas, and seeing this little kid out running around just made them miss their babies at home, and it gave them a minute. There was one guy that she called Papa because when we were at the terminal, if he saw her come in, he'd turn the remote onto Disney Channel, and he'd fight with the other drivers that wanted to change it off of Disney Channel. He's like, nope, we are watching Disney Channel. And he would sit there and watch whatever she wanted to watch, so they're dancing to Hannah Montana, and the other drivers are mad as hornets, but they grew to appreciate it, because it was like, oh, I miss my kids too, I wish I could do that. Or we didn't have the pushback that you get at some CV Rambos, but like in person we didn't have the pushback that people claim to be out here. You realize that we're all just moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas just out here trying to make it and provide for our families. And so, she met quite a few different characters, but I don't think that I can even think of any one that was negative in a way.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I do see people say that, and you're always going to have somebody with an opinion. But there's a lot of women out here and men who have their children on the road with them. And it helps them be able to get through whatever they have going on in life. And do it while being a parent. And it's a great opportunity if you can make it work. For you to spend that quality time with your kid, homeschooling them while you are making a living and getting on your feet.
If the big truck manufacturers want to actually reach out to me and let me help them design a family or friendlier truck layout, I've got so many ideas. I just want one of them to like say, hey, we're gonna make this custom truck so that we can start selling it to the fleets that want to recruit more moms and dads that have kids that want to come out on the road. Because I've got some ideas. I know, huh? Booster seats for sure. But like, there's a way to rotate the bunks, and I know of a company that already has the solution to, how mine, I ripped my top bunk out. Well, if I were to put a second bunk in here, I wouldn't put it back up there. I already know where I'd put it, and one company already has it, and they don't even realize that that's the solution to, because then that would be all cabinets. If you've got that would be all cabinets if you don't. So yeah, I know of other companies that have some of the solutions to how to make the trucks more family friendly. I just need one of the manufacturers to come and say, hey, let's talk about something. Freightliner, Peterbilt, Kenworth, Volvo.
Bring it on. Let's talk about this. Let's make it a little bit more mama friendly. So one more question about being a mom on the road before we head on over to your advocacy. If there was a woman that was thinking about getting into trucking right now that was in similar situations that you were in, what would your advice be? What would you tell them? Do it. Come, get out here. Do it.
Anytime someone's like, it doesn't even matter if they're a mom. If there's a woman who approaches me and says, you drive that? I'd be scared of it. I'm like, no, what's stopping you? Well, no, just do it. You're not going to regret it. Do it. There are companies that I know of that actually want, I think there's a TikTok of a girl who is out there, and she's got her baby carrier strapped to the front of her with her baby in it, and she's opening the trailer doors. And I don't know if I should name the company that is it, but I've referred to drivers to say, they're like, hey, where can I take my kids? I've referred them to that company because I've never really heard anything bad about them. But overall, if you can get away from not going to a company sponsored and get your CDL at a community college, you can pick your company and pick the one that is going to be the most friendly to your family.
Yes. Well said.
And also, you don't have to get on a bus to go 5 states away to find a driving job. Every state has driving jobs.
Yes. And don't take a bus because a good company will put you in a rental car. Just saying. Just saying. So when you're not driving or, even driving, you are an advocate. We work together on a lot of things. I love working with you and bouncing ideas off of you. You're like my soundboard. So what made you join Real Women Trucking in the beginning?
So my daughter had gotten out of the truck and she was almost ready to graduate. So she was like 17 years old. So this was in 2019. She was 16. She'd gotten out of the truck and went back to Michigan to live with my sister and finish out high school with her cousins. And so I lost my little buddy in a way. And that's what she needed to do. She wanted to graduate with her cousin. But I now didn't know what to do with myself and my time, and it being very isolating on the road. I was just trying to figure out where I fit in the industry now that she's, back home, and, I was preparing for her to graduate. So I was trying to get the empty nest syndrome over with first and figure out what I'm going to do before I actually have to do it. And I joined other groups for women, and I found that they were not very nice. If your actual lived personal experience varied from their image that they wanted to produce, then you were wrong and you were shut down. And you couldn't share your lived experiences if it was anything that was not sunshine and roses and cupcakes and Claire dolls. So I got into kind of a little bit of a tussle with the president of that organization, and Miss Idella, who she's always watching in every group. She might not comment on everything, but she's watching. She's watching for the firecrackers. That is her specialty. She'll read every comment, and then she'll click and send a message to someone on a comment they made, saying, "Hey, you're a firecracker. Come over here with me." And so I found it through Idella reaching out to me on Facebook and saying, "Hey, we could use a little bit more like you. And we feel like your place is over here with other fiery upstart women that don't have filters." And, so that's how I got involved. And I joined and, started sharing posts, and, I really felt like I'd found my tribe and my crew when I finally started to really get involved, because they weren't looking down on me for my situation and my story of how I got to here. I felt judged in other places, but they're like, Desiree is the one that was like, "No, I've heard your story, and I need you to tell it over and over and over and over again until you're sick of telling it, because it needs to be told." Right. Because it is a very powerful story, and it's something that's going to give hope. And I didn't think that I was doing anything revolutionary when I just went and picked up my daughter. I was just trying to survive. But right. Looking back on it, I realized that was when I was like, oh crap, I was actually like breaking the mold. I was actually reinventing the wheel. Like, I'm doing something that a lot of people would not have had the courage to do. But in the moment, it didn't feel groundbreaking. It just felt like I just needed to survive. So.
And since you've been a part of Real Women in Trucking, you've been involved in a lot of advocacy efforts. And which ones have been the most important to you?
When I see a woman that is being mistreated or struggled, or who's suffered the most horrific assault and most degrading and humiliating things possible at the hands of her trainer, just being able to say, "I'm sorry that happened to you. How can I help you? What,
what do you need?
Let me see if we can, yeah, what do you need?" Like, that's not okay. Like, telling women you don't have to be quiet. Yeah, I participate in truck parking, and anytime we have to appeal to our elected representatives, I'm on my, I got Warnock and Ossoff, and they already know when they see mine come through, it's trucking. I've got their contacts, and, I call regularly and let them know, like, hey, this is what I don't like today about trucking. It's your problem now. That's good and fine, and that helps on the policy side. But for me, it's letting women who don't know who to turn to and don't know where to go know that they have a tribe, they have a crew, they have friends out here, and that is us.
Yes. And that is something in this industry that people don't want to talk about, but really should. I mean, drivers don't know where to go. And the ones who don't know who we are yet, they don't know where to turn. And I'm glad we're here for them to be able to do that.
even if I can't help in any way, just sitting and listening to someone trust me enough to talk about what happened to them, sometimes that's all they need to just to work through and start that healing process, and let them know that it does get better. We'll find a place for you out here. This won't happen again. We're going to work so that it doesn't happen to anybody else. And that's one of the hardest things too, is getting people to want to even open up about this horrific event, because it is a terrifying and isolating event. And I think if more women knew the scope of the issue, it would be a bigger topic. But as long as these companies and these trainers and these people in the industry continue to let the woman think that it was an isolated incident, no one's going to believe you. We're not going to have actual change happen. So we need to keep talking about it. We need to keep telling people, these are your resources. These are who you call. Please tell somebody.
So last year, Real Women Trucking, I launched the I Have a Voice campaign. One of the things that I hear more than anything, and you hear the same thing, is nobody cares what I have to say. But we know that's not true. So, what's one moment where you realized, okay, what I'm saying actually matters? And she's grinning because she knows where this is going. When you realize your voice mattered.
So the day I realized I was actually ruffling feathers and making an impact, was so in 2019 at the Great American Truck Show, we signed we passed a petition around, and we collected, we spent the whole show collecting signatures to give to Ray Martinez, asking for him to address the actual problems in the industry in regards to training and the assaults of women, and to don't just say, we'll look into it. We have the data. We have, there's books written about it. We have the information. It's out there. The lawsuits should be enough. Let's start fixing the problem. A week later, I get an email from my company wanting to know what happened at the truck show. And it came out that a woman from another organization didn't like me collecting signatures and me talking to people about and all I was doing was, here's our bullet point initiatives, here's our different, here's the main topics of the petition, will you sign it? She didn't like that I was doing that, and she went after my job as a company driver. So that was when it clicked that if I wasn't a threat, if what I was saying had no bearing or impact, she wouldn't have given two craps about whether or not I still got to keep my job as a company driver. So I was bullied into becoming an owner operator. I hate every minute of being it sometimes, but I had to make a decision. Do I go to another company and have it happen again? Because once I realized that I was making a difference, I wasn't going to shut up. I was going to let everybody know. So it just made the situation worse, because I operate under my brother's authority, and he would love for somebody to call and say who he can and cannot hire. He speaks 4 languages and cusses in all of them,
That's a horrible way to have to become an owner operator. But, obviously that transition has worked out well for you. You've been doing it for a while now. You're learning a lot. I think one of the biggest things you seem to put out there publicly is your how you handle maintenance. And I always love watching your posts on Facebook when you are navigating maintenance issues. And I know a lot of women on the road aren't very mechanically inclined. So that is generally their biggest obstacle when becoming an owner operator. So without going into a lot, we're kind of starting to wrap up the show. What would you tell them about the maintenance part of it, and what has your experience been navigating that?
My best experiences came to me in maintenance of the truck as a company driver. So from day one, if something broke, I wanted to know why it broke, how I could have prevented it, how I can fix it, if I can fix it myself. And I worked with every mechanic, every tow truck. I learned more about my truck from tow truck operators that came to get me off the side of the road than anything. So
Wow.
before I even bought the truck and got into the owner operator side, I wanted to learn everything I could about that piece of equipment. Um, and so I was never afraid. Like, I asked questions. If they would let me watch them as they worked, I was watching them as they worked, not because I wanted to supervise. It's because I wanted to know what they were doing, and most mechanics will walk you through what they do or tell you, they'll give you this information if you want to learn. So I think before you actually even think about buying a truck, learn everything you can learn on other people's equipment.
I agree.
That's the best way to do it. It's cheaper to learn on your company equipment, how to maintain it, than it is to learn on your own, because it's an expensive learning curve on your own.
Yes, it is.
And, before you decide to buy a truck, you need to have your mechanic already before you buy the truck, not after, before. You need to know who's going to service your truck, every time you take it home, and who is going to be the keeper of your maintenance records. Right now it's Dwight with mine. He knows every single thing. Even if another shop did it, I go in and I let him know, hey, this shop did this. He double checks it. If another shop pulls a part off because they say it's bad, he always says, no, they're not going to just change it and take the part. You have to bring the part back to me, because if it's not bad and they changed it, I'm going after them. So he is my number one ally in the maintenance of the truck, because he is invested in my success. Because as long as I'm successful, I'm going to keep coming to him, and he's going to keep fixing my truck. And so he's not going to let me get screwed over, because it's his name on the line too with me. If he didn't fix something correctly, it falls back on him. So always find your mechanic before you buy your truck, because they're going to be your biggest ally in, keeping your costs controlled, your maintenance. And don't be afraid to get dirty. Glenn always calls me his dirt ball.
Yep.
He's got some funny stories. He's like, I see something hanging from my truck, and he goes and he's going to go in and change his clothes because he had nice clothes on. And before he could get back out of the truck, he saw me pulling myself underneath, and I'd rolled underneath there, and I've already gotten it fixed and zipped it. I'm like, hand me some zip ties, which save a lot of money in bolts, because I just zip tie a lot of things.
Yep.
He's like, get out of there, dirtball, before somebody sees you climbing underneath there, and then it embarrasses me, But now he loves it. If I open my hood and I'm working on something, and he sees other people trying to walk up, he's like, he's not going to help me, because he knows I want to figure it out. And it might take me twice as long without help, but I'm going to figure it out myself. And when he sees somebody trying to stroll over to offer their advice or to supervise my work, he tells them absolutely not. Her brother said, don't talk to her while she's doing this. She's not allowed to have anybody else touch her truck. That's the biggest thing. Like, he stands outside and guards so that I can just sit there and tinker with my truck,
Yeah, I was the same way. I learned how to jumpstart my starter. So I always thought that, that was kind of fun. And there's changing lights and changing pieces, and I learned how to do a lot of things on my own.
I
There's
know
certain
that
things I won't touch, but I'm
when
not
my
going to change a
alternator
tire.
no, but when my alternator caught fire, between putting the flames out and getting it disconnected and pulled off my truck so it didn't catch fire again, I learned that I can do it in 2.5 minutes, because I keep the right tools next to my seat. They're always handy, and my truck is 32 years old, so all of my tools are always right at my seat, because you never know when I'm gonna have to hop out and tighten something or loosen something or do something. It's always a mess.
I could just imagine the women that are listening that are just horrified about, and overwhelmed by the thought of working on your truck. But actually, once you get out in this industry, you gain confidence that you never had before. And you learn a lot of new skills. And this isn't something you do every day, but it is something that sometimes you have to do, or you might want to do. And that's okay. It is perfectly okay to crawl underneath your truck or crawl in there and get dirty. And it's perfectly okay if you don't want to.
for me, it's that sense of accomplishment because I just a girl, and then I climb out from underneath my truck and I'm covered in grease and I getting ready to go and shower, and it's just like we are the champions. Like it's that I did it myself moment. Like I just do it on something small. Just change your own mud flap, and you're gonna feel that. You'll be like, oh, I like tools. This is
Yeah,
fun.
I'm like, boom, boom. Like, even at home when I put my first thermostat on the wall, I'm like, girl power. It's the same thing in the truck. I learned to
Absolutely.
light my water heater the first time, when you learn to do something on your truck. So, before we sign off, I do want to ask, with everything you've done, what you're continuing to do, what the future looks like, what do you want your impact on this industry to be?
I want everyone to know that you don't have to be a industry leader to have an impact. I feel like I'm such a small fish, a small fry. It's the little advocacy. It's the fill out the truck parking survey. It's submit a comment on the FMCSA comment board. It's call your elected representatives. People always say that's never going to work. Really? Because mine know me. Like they know when I'm calling in. Like it's just, little advocacies here and there add up. And if all of us did, if we spent 15 minutes resharing information about the trucking industry that's real information, good information, or taking a survey or calling our representatives about what's going on in the trucking industry 10, 15 minutes a week, the impact overall is going to be astronomical, and the changes we'll see. You just have to do your small minutes of advocacy add up.
And
Pennies make
share
dollars.
your stories. They do. And share your stories. Change is never going to happen if we stay quiet about the issues that we encounter. So it's really important that you share those experiences so change can happen.
Exactly.
Anything else, Jess, you want to say before we say goodbye?
I mean, I could talk about trucking all day and get up tomorrow and do it all again. So, I mean, I don't know if we have enough time for that, but no, I look forward to connecting again. And, I'm just glad that somebody wants to hear my story, and hopefully one person listening is like, I can do that. Whether it be, I can, change my air dryer myself, which it's only like 4 bolts and a couple of hoses. So it's not a big deal. You can do it. Or, and YouTube has the videos for it. Or if it's, I'm gonna start to see. Maybe I'm gonna schedule a once a month call to my elected representatives and just tell them what I face every day, and what can they do about it. Little things.
So Jess is on all the share your story. Jess is on all the socials. So if anybody's listening and they have questions about homeschooling, being a mom on the road, I'm sure Jess would not mind if you reached out to her. She's on everything. She's out there. She's on Facebook. She's on
across
Twitter.
The platforms. It's Rig Jess, and I think my Mohawk picture is there. So
I think you're
Rig Jess on
too. Yeah. Jess Graham on Facebook. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Trucking with Tamie today. And you guys stay safe out there and have a great evening.